The salt-stained pickup truck rolled to a stop outside the weathered lighthouse keeper's cottage, its engine ticking in the cool maritime air. Douglas Whitmore, fresh from a month-long business trip to Singapore, stepped out and breathed deeply. The Atlantic Ocean spread before him like a dark blue tablecloth, and the lighthouse, his family's legacy for 3 generations, stood sentinel against the November sky. 1862, Douglas had earned every grey hair on his head. His shipping empire had made him wealthy beyond measure, but the lighthouse and its surrounding 20 acres were his true treasure. This was where he came to escape the boardrooms and balance sheets, where he could be just Doug, the man who loved the sea. He grabbed his leather briefcase and headed toward the cottage, expecting the silence he'd paid for. The property manager had assured him everything would be secure during his absence. Instead, he heard laughter. Children's laughter. Douglas froze on the gravel path. Through the cottage window, he could see movement, small figures darting past the glass. His jaw tightened. He'd dealt with squatters before in some of his commercial properties, but here, in his sanctuary, he marched to the front door and pushed it open without knocking. The scene that greeted him stopped him cold. 3 identical little girls, no more than 5 years old, sat around his dining table with crayons scattered everywhere. They were drawing pictures, their blonde pigtails bouncing as they giggled. And standing at his stove, stirring something in a pot, was a young black woman in faded jeans and her oversized sweater. She spun around at the sound of the door, her dark eyes going wide with fear. "Who are you?" Douglas demanded, his voice sharp as broken glass. "What are you doing in my home?" The woman's hand went to her chest. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry, they told me you wouldn't be back until next week." "They told you?" His voice rose. "Who gave you permission to be here at all?" The 3 little girls had gone silent, their crayon-stained fingers frozen in mid-air. They looked at their mother, then at the angry man in the doorway, their faces crumpling toward tears. "Please, sir, let me explain," the woman said quickly, moving between Douglas and the children. "My name is Angela Rivera. I'm the new caretaker. Your property manager, Mr. Chen, hired me 2 weeks ago. The arrangement was supposed to be caretaker." Douglas barked. "I never authorized any caretaker, and I certainly didn't authorize anyone to live here with their children." "Mr. Chen said you needed someone on site while you traveled," Angela said, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. "He showed me the paperwork. I have copies. I don't care what Chen showed you. This is my private residence, not a daycare center." Douglas pointed toward the door. "I want you out. Today. Now." One of the little girls burst into tears. Then another. Within seconds, all 3 were crying, their identical faces scrunched up in distress. "Girls, it's okay," Angela said softly, kneeling beside them. "Remember what Mama said. We're strong like the lighthouse. We weather every storm." She looked back at Douglas, and he saw something in her eyes that wasn't just fear, it was fierce determination mixed with desperation. "Mr. Whitmore, please. Just give me 24 hours to make other arrangements. It's almost dark, and my daughters, Lily, Rose, and Daisy, they've been sick. I just need one night to find somewhere safe." "That's not my problem," Douglas said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. The crying children were getting to him, much as he tried to ignore them. "I understand you're angry," Angela continued. "I would be too. But we have nowhere else to go. We lost our apartment 3 months ago when the landlord sold the building. I've been working 3 jobs trying to save enough for a deposit on a new place, but with Triplets." Her voice cracked. "Everything costs 3 times as much." Douglas looked at the crying children, at their drawings scattered across his antique table, pictures of the lighthouse, the ocean, flowers. His eyes moved to the pot on the stove, bubbling with what smelled like vegetable soup. "Mr. Chen said this job came with housing," Angela said quietly. "That's the only reason I took it. The only reason I could take it. I can't afford childcare for 3, and I can't leave them alone while I work." Something in Douglas's chest tightened uncomfortably. He recognized that desperation. He'd seen it in his own mother's eyes 50 years ago, when his father died and left her with 2 young boys and a mountain of debt. "Please," Angela whispered. "Just one night." Douglas closed his eyes. Every practical instinct screamed at him to refuse, to call the police, to have them removed immediately. This was his property, his space, his sanctuary that she'd invaded, but those 3 little faces, "Fine," he growled. "One night. Tomorrow morning, you're gone. Understood?" Angela's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll be out by dawn, I promise." "Not dawn. A reasonable hour. I'm not a monster." Douglas turned toward the hallway. "I'll stay in the lighthouse keeper's quarters upstairs." As he climbed the narrow staircase with his briefcase, he could hear Angela soothing the children, their sobs gradually quieting. He told himself he was doing the minimum, the bare minimum that human decency required. He didn't sleep well that night, The next morning, Douglas came downstairs at 7 to find the cottage spotlessly clean. The table had been scrubbed, the dishes washed and put away. The girls' drawings were neatly stacked on the counter with a note on top in careful handwriting, "Thank you for your kindness. I've cleaned everything. We'll be gone within the hour." Angela he found them outside, 3 small suitcases packed and lined up by the door. Angela was braiding Lily's hair while Rose and Daisy waited their turn, all 3 girls subdued and quiet. "Where will you go?" Douglas asked. Surprising himself, Angela didn't look up from the braid. "There's a women's shelter in Portland. It's a 2-hour bus ride, but they said they might have space." "Might have space. They're usually full, but they keep a wait list." She tied off the braid with a practiced motion. "We'll figure something out. We always do." Douglas watched as she moved to Rose, her fingers working quickly and efficiently. These were the hands of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, who'd learned to make every moment count, because there was never enough time, never enough money, never enough help. "What happened to their father?" he asked. Angela's hands paused, just for a second. "He died before they were born. Car accident. He was a good man, a teacher. We weren't married yet, but we were planning. Anyway. That was 6 years ago. And you've been raising them alone since then?" "Yes, sir." She finished Rose's braid and moved to Daisy. "I worked as a nurse's aide for a while, but the overnight shifts were impossible with 3 babies. Then I did housekeeping, waitressing, whatever I could find that let me bring them along or work during their preschool hours." Douglas found himself calculating in his head, 3 children, 1 income, no support, no family help evident. The math didn't work. It couldn't possibly work. "Mr. Chen's offer seemed like a miracle," Angela continued, her voice soft. "A place to stay, a salary, work I could do with the girls here during the day. I should have known it was too good to be true." "Chen had no authority to make that offer," Douglas said, but he felt defensive saying it. "I know that now." Angela tied the final braid and stood, gathering her daughters close. "Girls, say thank you to Mr. Whitmore for letting us stay the night." "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore," 3 small voices chorused. Douglas looked at them, 3 identical faces with bright, intelligent eyes. Eyes that had probably seen too much hardship already. "The lighthouse does need a caretaker," he heard himself say. Angela's head snapped up. "And this cottage has been empty most of the year," Douglas continued slowly, the words coming out despite his better judgment. "It's not good for a property to sit vacant. Pipes freeze, wood rots, vandals break in." "What are you saying?" Angela asked carefully. "I'm saying." Douglas ran a hand through his hair. "I'm saying Chen wasn't entirely wrong. I do travel frequently. It would be useful to have someone on site. Someone who could handle basic maintenance, keep an eye on things, manage the property." "I can do that," Angela said quickly. "I'm good with repairs, I've had to be. And I'm a hard worker, Mr. Whitmore. The hardest worker you'll ever meet." Douglas believed her. He could see it in every line of her body, in the calluses on her hands, in the determined set of her jaw. "The cottage is yours," he said. "Rent-free. Plus a salary for property management and caretaking. We'll work out the details, but it'll be enough to support you and the girls properly." Angela's eyes filled with tears. "Why would you do this?" Douglas looked out the window at the lighthouse, standing strong against the morning tide. His grandfather had built it, his father had maintained it, and now it was his responsibility to keep it standing. "Because everyone deserves a lighthouse," he said quietly. "Everyone deserves something solid to hold onto when the storms come." The arrangement, Douglas told himself, was purely practical. The cottage needed oversight. The property needed maintenance. Angela needed housing and income. It was a simple business transaction that benefited everyone. That's what he told himself the first week, when Angela proved herself incredibly capable, fixing a broken gate, patching a section of roof, organizing his cluttered storage shed. That's what he told himself the second week, when he found himself lingering at the cottage each morning, drinking coffee while the triplets ate breakfast, and chatted about everything and nothing. That's what he told himself the third week, when he realized he was scheduling his travel around Angela's needs, making sure he'd be there when the girls had their school play, or when Angela needed an extra hand moving supplies. The truth was more complicated. Douglas found himself drawn into their world almost against his will. Daisy showed him her seashell collection, and explained the scientific names she'd learned from library books. Rose asked him endless questions about ships and sailing. Lily, the shyest, started leaving him little drawings, pictures of the lighthouse always with 4 figures standing beside it. "She's including you," Angela explained one evening, finding him staring at the latest drawing on his refrigerator. "She draws our family." "I'm not family," Douglas said automatically. "Aren't you?" Angela smiled. "You fixed Rose's bicycle last week. You taught Daisy about navigation stars. You read to Lily every Wednesday night. That's just. I was just being kind, Angela finished. Being exactly what we needed. Douglas turned away, uncomfortable with the emotion in her voice. You pay for it with your work. No. Angela's hand touched his arm, stopping him. The work pays for the house and salary. The kindness, that's something else entirely. That's something you give freely, even though you pretend you don't. Over the following months, Douglas found himself investing more and more in the little household that had taken root in his cottage. He hired a tutor to work with the girls on their reading. He made sure they had proper winter coats. He taught them to sail in his small boat, weathering Angela's initial fears until even she had to admit the ocean was safer than she'd believed. You're spoiling them, Angela warned one day, watching him present 3 matching telescopes for the girls' 6th birthday. I'm educating them, Douglas corrected. There's a difference. But he knew she was right. He was spoiling them, and loving every minute of it. The real test came in February, when Angela collapsed while cleaning the Lighthouse gallery. Douglas found her unconscious, her skin burning with fever. The girls were at school, and he was alone with her limp form, his hands shaking as he called 911. Pneumonia, the doctor told him at the hospital. Severe case. She's been pushing through it for days, probably weeks, without treatment. Another day, or 2, and we'd be looking at a very different outcome. Why wouldn't she go to the doctor? Douglas demanded. The doctor gave him a look that said he should know better. No health insurance. No savings to cover the bill. And 3 children who need their mother working to keep a roof over their heads. Douglas sat in that hospital room for 3 days while Angela fought the infection, the girl staying with a neighbor he'd hastily arranged. He watched her sleep, watched her struggle for breath, watched her finally start to heal, and he realized something that terrified him. He loved her, not like an employer loves a good employee. Not like a benefactor cares for someone they are helping. He loved her like a man loves a woman, completely, irrationally, impossibly. When Angela finally woke, groggy and disoriented, the first thing she asked was, the girls? They are fine, Douglas assured her. Mrs. Patterson has them. They've made cookies every day, and drawn you about 200 get-well cards. Angela closed her eyes. The cottage, I haven't cleaned, the work can wait, Douglas said firmly. You nearly died, because you were too stubborn to take care of yourself. I had to work. I can't lose this job. I can't, you won't lose the job, Douglas interrupted. But we're making changes. Real health insurance, for you and the girls. Sick leave. Backup help when you need it. I can't accept that, Angela protested weakly. It's too much. It's the bare minimum I should have provided from the start, Douglas said. And it's non-negotiable. Angela studied his face for a long moment. Why do you care so much? Douglas looked at this woman, this fierce, proud, beautiful woman who'd fought so hard for so long, and knew he couldn't hide anymore. Because you're not just my employee, Angela. You're. He struggled for words. You're home. You and those 3 little girls who've completely disrupted my quiet, ordered life. You're what I didn't know I was missing. Tears spilled down Angela's cheeks. Douglas, I'm a broke single mother with 3 children and nothing to offer you. You're a millionaire. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone, Douglas said quietly. I want you. I want Tuesday night dinners where Daisy explains marine biology. I want Rose's endless questions. I want Lily's shy smiles. I want to wake up knowing you're all there, safe and cared for. We can't, this isn't. I'm not asking for anything, Douglas said quickly. I'm just telling you the truth. You don't have to feel the same way. Nothing has to change. You'll still have the cottage, the job, everything I promised. But I needed you to know. Angela reached out and took his hand, her fingers thin and warm in his grip. You impossible, wonderful man. How can you think I don't feel the same? Douglas's breath caught. What? I've been falling for you since the day you yelled at us to get out, Angela said, laughing and crying at the same time. Every kind thing you did, every time you played with my girls, every Wednesday night, when you read to Lily even though you had a business call scheduled, I fell a little more. Then why? Because I was afraid, Angela admitted. Afraid you were just being kind. Afraid you'd realize we weren't worth the trouble. Afraid of losing everything if I let myself hope for more. Douglas leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently. You're worth everything, Angela Rivera. You and those 3 miracles of yours. The wedding was small, held in the lighthouse on a sunny June morning with the ocean spreading blue and infinite beyond the windows. Lily, Rose, and Daisy wore matching white dresses and carried bouquets of wildflowers they'd picked themselves. They'd asked to walk their mother down the aisle, and Douglas had to wipe his eyes as he watched all 4 of his girls approach. I should warn you, Angela whispered as they exchanged rings, we come as a package deal. Best deal I ever made, Douglas whispered back, That evening, with the girls finally asleep after an excitement-filled day, Douglas and Angela stood at the top of the lighthouse and looked out over their land. "What made you change your mind?" Angela asked. "That first morning, when you could have sent us away, what made you let us stay?" Douglas thought about it. "I saw myself in you," he said finally. "Or rather, I saw my mother. She raised me and my brother alone after my father died. Everyone told her she couldn't do it, that she should give us up, that it was too hard. But she fought for us every single day. She made something from nothing, and she never let us see how scared she was. She sounds amazing." "She was. She died when I was in college, worked herself to death, probably, just like you were trying to do." Douglas pulled Angela closer. "I built my empire to make her proud, to prove that her sacrifice meant something. But I forgot what she really taught me, that the people we love are worth more than all the money in the world." "So you saved us?" Angela teased gently. "No." Douglas kissed the top of her head. "You saved me. You and 3 little girls who taught a bitter old man how to be part of a family again." The lighthouse beam swept across the dark water, steady and sure, guiding ships safely home, just like Angela had guided him. Douglas sat in the cottage living room, now expanded and renovated, but still cozy, watching Rose help her younger brother with his homework. Yes, brother, Jacob had arrived 3 years ago, a surprise but a welcome one, cementing the family that had formed in such an unexpected way. Lily was at the piano, practicing the piece she'd play at her school recital. Daisy was outside with Angela, studying tide pools for a science project. The house hummed with life and love and the beautiful chaos of family. Douglas's business partner, Marcus, sat across from him, shaking his head in wonder. "I still can't believe it," Marcus said. "You were the most confirmed bachelor I knew. Now look at you, 4 kids, a wife you adore, and you're actually smiling." Douglas grinned. "Best mistake I ever made." "Mistake?" "Coming home early that day. Finding them here. I almost threw them out, Marcus. I almost destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was angry about property and procedure, and all these things that don't actually matter." "But you didn't," Marcus pointed out. "No. I didn't." Douglas watched Angela through the window, her head bent close to Daisy's as they examined something in the rocks. "I let them stay for 1 night. And that 1 night of mercy turned into a lifetime of joy." Marcus followed his gaze. "You know what people say about you now?" "What?" "That you're the luckiest man alive." Douglas thought about that. Thought about the lonely, bitter man he'd been, rattling around in empty properties, measuring his worth in dollars instead of love. "They're right," he said softly. "But it wasn't luck. It was a choice. A choice to see past my anger and rules and pride. A choice to let love in, even when it came in the most unexpected form." Rose looked up from the homework. "Dad, can you help me with this math problem?" "Dad." The word still made his heart swell every time he heard it. "Coming, sweetheart." As he crossed the room, Douglas caught sight of Lily's latest drawing on the refrigerator, the lighthouse, the cottage, and 5 figures standing together under a sky full of stars, his family. His lighthouse. His home, and it had all started with a single moment of mercy on a cold November day, when he chose compassion over anger and opened his heart to the possibility that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages.